Oh yes, we are live on YouTube. Namaste, Dr. Kaustubh Desikachar. So glad to have
Namaste.
you in my
Thank you,
conversation
Apurva.
series. Oh, it's a pleasure to welcome you.
It is a
So
great
nice to
pleasure.
have you here today, and hope you are doing good.
So far, so good.
And
So far,
can
so
the viewers please? So we have our viewers on YouTube. Can you please hear me? Yes. I think they are able to hear us. So we will start the session, sir. So to give a brief
yes.
introduction of Dr. Kaustubh Desikachar, he's the current lineage holder of the classical yoga tradition of Sri Krishnamacharya and TKV Desikachar. He's an acclaimed yoga teacher, yoga therapist, healer, and spiritual mentor. He's the founder of the Krishnamacharya Healing and Yoga Foundation and is currently its chief executive officer. Welcome again, sir. I request you to please start with a chant since you're also an expert in Vedic chanting, and I'm sure that our viewers will enjoy it a lot.
Namaste, Apurva. Namaste, all the people who are watching. Thank you for being here. I'm certainly not an expert in Vedic chanting, but I'm a very great fan of Vedic chanting. But the chant I'm going to do today is very relevant to our topic. It is not from the Vedas, but it is from the Vedic tradition. It is a chant that is called Sri Narayanashtakam, which is composed by the great Acharya Sri Kura Narayana Swami, who lived many hundred years ago. Shri Narayanashtakam वात्सल्यादभयप्रदान समयादापाति निर्वापणात् औदार्यादघशोषणादगणितश्रेयः पदप्रापणात् सेव्य श्रीपतिरेक एव जगतामेते अभवन् साक्षिणः प्रह्लादश्च विभीषणश्च करिराट् पाञ्चाल्यहल्याध्रुवः प्रह्लादास्ति यदेश्वरो वदहरिः सर्वत्र मे दर्शया स्तम्भे चैवमिति ब्रुवन्तमसुरन् तत्राविरासेद्धरिः तक्षस्तस्य विदारयन् निजनखैर्वात्सल्यमापादयन् आर्तत्राणपरायणः स भगवान् नारायणो मे गतिः श्रीरामोऽत्र विभीषणो यमनघो रक्षोभयादागतः सुग्रीवानय पालयैन मधुना पौलस्त्यमेवागताम् इत्युक्त्वा भयमस्य सर्वविदितं यो राघवो दत्तवान् आर्तत्राणपरायणः स भगवान् नारायणो मे गतिः नक्रग्रस्तपदं समुद्धृतकरं ब्रह्मादयो भूसुराः पाल्यन्तामिति दीनवाक्यकरिणं देवेष्वशक्तेषु यः मा भैषीरिति यस्य नक्रहनने चक्रायुधः श्रीधरः आर्तत्राणपरायणः स भगवान् नारायणो मे गतिः भो कृष्णाच्युत भो कृपालय हरे भो पाण्डवानां सखे क्वासि क्वासि सुयोधनादपहृतां भोरक्ष मामातुराम् इत्युक्तो क्षयवस्त्रसंभृततनुं योपालय द्रौपदीम् आर्तत्राणपरायणः स भगवान् नारायणो मे गतिः यत्पादाब्जनखोदकं त्रिजगतां पापौघविध्वंसनम् यन्नामामृतपूरकं च पिबतां संसारसन्तारकम् पाषाणोऽपि यदङ्घ्रिपद्मरजसा शापान् मुनेर्मोचितः आर्तत्राणपरायणो मे गतिः पित्रा भ्रातरमुत्तमासनगतं चौत्तानपादिर्ध्रुवः दृष्ट्वा तत्सममारुरुक्षु रदृतो मात्रावमानं गतः यङ्गत्वा शरणं यदापतपसा हेमाद्रिसिंहासनम् आर्तत्राणपरायणः स भगवान् नारायणो मे गतिः कावेरी हृदयाभिरामपुलिने पुण्ये जगन्मङ्गले चन्द्राम्भोजवती तटे परिसरे धात्रा समाराधिते श्रीरङ्गे भुजगेन्द्रभोगशयने शेते सदा यः पुमान् आर्तत्राणपरायणः स भगवान् नारायणो मे गतिः आर्ता विषण्णाः शिथिलाश्च भीताः घोरेषु च व्याधिषु वर्तमानाः संकीर्त्य नारायण शब्दमात्रम् विमुक्त दुःखाः सुखिनो भवन्तु।
So you're able to hear me, right?
Namo Narayanaya. Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste.
Thank you, sir. That was very nice. So we will go to our topic of discussion, that is our conversation for today, which is the Yoga of Śaraṇāgati, placing myself at your lotus feet. So we do keep hearing about this very often, that it is necessary to surrender to God and to leave all our problems to Him and that He will take care. So could you please tell us what exactly is Śaraṇāgati?
So actually, we all don't need, everybody doesn't need to surrender to the God. It is a choice. It is a choice that we make, whether we want to take that path or not. So the concept of Śaraṇāgati, which is also called Prapatti, is also defined as the षडanga Yoga, the yoga of 6 limbs, where we are basically surrendering our ego to the feet of the divine, wherein we kind of say that we kind of recognize that we really are not the master of this world, including our own self. If you look at it in a very honest and sincere manner, we are not even in charge of ourselves all the time. And therefore, we cannot really be in charge of other people all the time because we can't even be in charge of ourselves. So, obviously, there is a force that is greater than us that is somehow pulling the strings here and there so that life moves on in the way that it moves on. And recognizing this force that is greater than us, multiple times greater, infinite times greater than us. And therefore, once we recognize that greatness, we become very insignificant. So we surrender our ego to this divine and we place ourselves at the service of this divine so that we fulfill the dharma that we are meant to do, no matter what that is. Because in the Vedic tradition, each of us are given a dharma, a potential a dharma, but actually by the divine based on the past karmas that we have done. And this is what the divine is giving us. So that's why we surrender to the divine, saying, well, look, I am not in charge of myself, nor am I in charge of anything that is happening outside me. So please guide me and give me the clarity that I have the strength and health to achieve my dharma, and therefore I surrender myself. Now, this is what is called Śaraṇāgati or Prapatti, and it can be done for various reasons. And there are basically two types of Prapatti, what is called Sapala Prapatti and Aphala Prapatti. We surrender because we want something to be done, something to be achieved. That is called as Sapala Prapatti. For example, Sugriva surrenders to Rama because he wants his kingdom back from Vali. Draupadi surrenders to Krishna because she does not want to be disrobed in front of all the Kauravas in the palace. Vibhishana is a little bit more better. He does not want to be part of Ravana's kingdom. He wants to be saved from Ravana's wrath, so he surrenders to Rama. All these could be considered as Sapala Prapatti. Surrender because they want some purpose or benefit to be achieved. It's not bad. It's not bad because we all have some purpose to be fulfilled. We are suffering from life, like for example, we are now suffering from Corona. So if we can surrender to the divine, saying, please help us from Corona, it's not bad. It's something that we need in our life because the Corona is really becoming a big distraction or a disturbance for many of us to fulfill our dharma. So many close people, family members or friends and their family members are getting affected, some of them passing away, etc. So it's not wrong to have Sapala Prapatti because it is anyway a Prapatti. There's another type of Prapatti that is called Aphala Prapatti, which means surrender without any benefit or need in hand. There are two great examples of this. One is Hanuman and the other is Jatayu. Hanuman and Jatayu surrender to Rama not because they want something from him. They only recognize Rama's greatness and say, you are so great, let me be in your service. So this is what is called Aphala Prapatti, which is even more superior, where the surrender is just because of the recognition of the greatness of somebody and there is no expectation in return. The same which Aphala Prapatti, another example, is what Madhura Kavi Alvar did to Nammalvar. Madhura Kavi was already a very well established Acharya, Brahmana, but the moment he discovered Nammalvar, he falls at Nammalvar's feet, even though Madhura Kavi is much older, a man who probably was in his 60s when he discovered Nammalvar, and Nammalvar was 16 years old. So the age gap is also very big. Nammalvar is a young boy, Madhura Kavi is older. But Madhura Kavi does not really care. He sees the greatness of Nammalvar and immediately surrenders. This is what is called as Sharanagati or Prapatti. And except in certain cases, like the case of Draupadi, for example, or the case of Bali, for example, the concept of Prapatti is not a weakness. You see, Hanuman was a very strong person. Hanuman was a very knowledgeable person. The same with Madhura Kavi. The same with Jatayu. Jatayu fought Ravana. Jatayu was not a weakling. Yet they surrender to the greatness of the divine because they see that even though they have strength, there's something greater than the strength that they have. And that is why they surrender. And that is why Sharanagati or Prapatti is considered to be one of the 5 types of relation explore or have. Can explore or have. And even a non-human example of Prapatti is not only Jatayu but also Gajendra, the elephant, the king of elephants, who is surrendering to Vishnu so that he can be protected from the crocodile that catches him. And this story is known through what is called Gajendra Moksha. It's also an example of Prapatti or Sharanagati. And there are a number of examples like that that show us how important this concept is, because we really are not in charge of everything that happens in our life. There is some force that is beyond us, and that is a recognition that we should have. What prevents us from having this recognition is 2 things mainly: fear and ego. And usually ego is built on fear, so fundamentally it's fear. So that's why we are unable to have Sharanagati, but generally, if we can overcome our fears, we can surrender to the divine. The divine need not be only in the one form of one God. There are probably examples in other religions as well of Sharanagati or Prapatti. There's probably examples of this even in non-religious methods of spirituality. So the concept is that we place our ego at the service of the divine so that we are humble. In our Vedic tradition, and especially when we say in our Vedic tradition, I have to qualify this in the Sri Vaishnava tradition or the Vaishnava tradition. This concept is much more, strongly emphasized because of our acharyas like Ramanujacharya, Vedanta Deshika, etc., who have really propagated this topic of Prapatti very, very strongly. Where they are saying ultimately we are placing our head or heart, however you want to call it, at the feet of the God. Because the word Sharana means to seek refuge. So Sharanagati means we are completely seeking refuge in the divine. But there is a pun in the Sanskrit language. We can also call it Charanagati. Charana means feet. So we are completely at the feet of the divine. So Charanagati, Sharanagati are kind of synonyms or similar terms. That's why in the Sharanagati mantra we have Shriman Narayana Charanau Sharanam Prapatye Srimate Narayanaya Namo Namah. This mantra is called the Dvayam mantra, the second most important mantra. But any mantra that has the word Namaha is actually a Sharanagati mantra, because the word Namaha comes from the root Namuh Prakvi Bhava. That means Prakvi Bhava means to fold the body, which means to bow. When you bow, what happens? Your head comes down. So any mantra, whether it is Om Namah Shivaya or Om Namo Narayanaya or Om Shrim Shri Namaha, Om Ganeshaya Namaha, Anything that has the word Namaha is a Sharanagati mantra, because the word Namaha means I bow to you. That's why when we are saluting people, we are basically saying Namaha Te, Namaste, which means we are bowing to the Paramatma inside everybody, not to each other. So when I say Namaste to you, I am not bowing to Apurva, I am bowing to the divine that is in your heart. And when you say that to me or anybody else, you are not bowing to me or somebody else, you are bowing to that divine in that person's heart. So the word Namaha itself, whenever the mantra is with Namaha, it already is a Sharanagati mantra. It basically says, I bow to you. When you say I bow to you, it means you're placing your ego at the feet of the divine, which means you are letting go of ego. So this is called the Sharanagati concept.
So, is it necessary for somebody to have bhakti? What is the link between bhakti and Sharanagati?
A few moments ago, if you remember, I said that we human beings can experience 5 kinds of relationship: raga, anuraga, sneha, bhakti, and prapatti. These are the. So raga is the relationship that we can have with somebody we like. They don't have to like us. For example, I like Sachin Tendulkar from cricket. I like Rahul Dravid from cricket. This is raga because I like them. They don't have to like me. Like a fan relationship, like many people have with their Bollywood fans or Hollywood fans, etc. This type of relationship is called raga because we are investing our emotion. If something happens to them, we get affected. So it's a relationship that we have, even though they are not reciprocating. Then comes anuraga, the relationship between couples, for example, or family members. Like you like them, they also like you. What you can share with family members. You like them, they also like you. There's a desire to be with them. They also have a desire to be with you. Anuraga, mutual raga. Then comes sneha, which is the relationship that we share with friends. Sneha comes the words from the word snigdha, to stick together. So friends stick together, whether it's good times or bad times, friends will stick together. Doesn't matter who you are, what you are, they will stick together. Like Krishna and Sudhama, Karna and Duryodhana, it doesn't matter, they were friends. That's Sneha. Then comes Bhakti. Bhakti is a relationship of devotion, of service that normally we experience between a teacher and a student. A student has bhakti towards the teacher, and the teacher has bhakti towards his or her own teacher, but there is also a bhakti towards the student. There is a devotion, there is a dedication, there is a devotion. Whereas prapatti is even further, there is a surrender, where there is a complete hierarchy, where one is above the other, complete hierarchy, where one is exactly above the other, one is totally above the other. So this is only possible between us and the divine. So in fact, prapatti is a more advanced or a more deeper state of bhakti, because another word is used by Patanjali in the Yoga Sutra called pranidhana, which is very similar to prapatti, although some may argue slightly differently, but in the interpretations of our acharyas, pranidhana is also bhakti. And Vyasa defines pranidhana as bhakti visheshaha, a special form of bhakti which is reserved only for one particular relationship, that is with Ishvara. You can have bhakti towards your teacher, you can have bhakti towards uh, different teachers, like, but you can have only prapatti to one divine, whichever divine you choose. So that is the difference between bhakti and prapatti. Bhakti is more closer to Shraddha, but Prapatti is more closer to Pranidhana.
Okay. That's
And
that's interesting.
Shraddha is the prerequisite for pranidhana. Without Shraddha, there is no pranidhana. Therefore, without bhakti, there is no prapatti that is possible. So, in a way, bhakti is a prerequisite or a foundation for prapatti, and prapatti is the much more intimate connection that we have with the divine. And in fact, that Shraddha or bhakti is one of the six limbs of the Shadanga Yoga.
So we usually associate Sharanagati with Bhakti Yoga in general. So what is your view of the other margas which are there, like Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga? Ultimately, do they lead us to the same destination? Because this maybe probably is again that we look at the different schools of thought, but there is something special that because Acharya says that you have to surrender to God, that is Sharanagati. So when you take Jnana Marga or Karma Yoga, for example, do you ultimately again go and end up in Sharanagati? I mean, what is your perception of this?
For me, I may say something that may be slightly controversial and different than how many other people are looking at this kind of topic. The very word yoga means union. So the very union has to happen between two things. A union cannot be with one thing only. A union means it needs at least two things coming together. You cannot have union with one thing. So the word yoga ultimately, at the very most fundamental level, is the union between what is called the Jivatma and the Paramatma, the self and the divine that is within our heart. So there are two that are coming together. Okay. So the moment you say the word yoga, this union is implicit. All the modern people, they have a false understanding of this yoga because they think yoga is some gymnastic exercises or yoga is non-religious or non-spiritual. It is spiritual. It is very much spiritual. Now, what the karma yoga is saying is that do all your karma consistent with this union. That means do all your karma so that it leads, your actions lead you to the divine. Your actions continue this connection that you have with the divine. That is karma yoga. Karma yoga is not doing any action you want. The same way jnana yoga is an inquiry into this relationship. You understand. You make your inquiry, your curiosities, your examination, your analysis, whatever, so that it helps you to understand this relationship better. It is not a deviation from this concept of the union. So the word yoga implicitly implies the connection between the self and the divine. So all these paths are only different expressions of this connection. See, somebody may be a musician, but one person may sing, one person may do the drums, one person may play the veena, one person may play the violin. But yet they are all together in the concert. That concert is the metaphor for our life. And each of us, we have to play a different role in that yoga, the union between Jivatma and Paramatma. So maybe I will take a Karma Yoga path, somebody will take a Jnana Yoga path, somebody will take a Bhakti Yoga path. But there is actually no difference in the destination. There is only a difference in the expression. There is no difference in the destination. If we are going to be led to different places, then there is a problem. That's the problem with modern humanity because we are attached to our path. We are not realizing that different paths will anyway lead us to the same destination. And anyway, different paths originated from the same destination, which is the yoga. If that yoga is not there between the Jivatma and Paramatma, we are not going to have manifestation of life. Because life is happening because the Jivatma is becoming the Sharira for the Paramatma, who is the Shariri. If the Paramatma does not decide to give life to the self will not exist. So this is what is presented in our Vedic tradition.
Since you also spoke about yoga, that is the Ashtanga, that is the 8 limbs of yoga, I would like to question you on this. So, how can a practitioner actually try to incorporate this when they're in a very early stage of practice? For example, we start with yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, and so on and so forth. So, ultimately, yes, like you said, the ultimate goal is to understand this union between Jivatma and Paramatma. So, how can a practitioner actually incorporate this concept in the early stages of practice? So, what is your opinion, or what would you like to say about this?
I don't see any conflict at all between the Ashtanga Yoga and the Sharanagati concept. Because the Sharanagati is presented as the Shadanga Yoga, where we have the first limb of the Shadanga Yoga is Anukulyasya Sankalpaha. Do things that are consistent to the will of the divine. That means act morally, which is your yama, which is your niyama actually. And the second limb is Pratikulyasya Varjanam. Don't away from the divine. That is your yama, ahimsa, satyam, asteyam, etc. So yama and niyama are covered by this. Then they are saying in the Shadanga Yoga, Rakshishyati iti Vishwasa. You have to have a confidence that you will be protected, which is called Shraddha, which is basic. Gotripva Varanam Tata. Do the practice of mantra japa. Now, where are you doing the mantra japa? In either an asana, or either in pranayama, or either in dharana, dhyanam, or samadhi, because traditionally all the yoga of Patanjali, the Ashtanga yoga of Patanjali was samantraka. And when you use mantra, which mantras are you going to use? Any mantra that will have Namaha only was used traditionally. So Sharanagati was actually part of the Ashtanga Yoga, is actually part of the Ashtanga Yoga. It is not separate from that. Today we behave like monkeys thinking that asana is like a gymnastic exercise, and there are many modern yoga teachers who are aligning themselves with the medical profession, and some of them are even medical doctors, some Indians, some from abroad, who talk as if asanas are meant to be consistent with medical anatomy of the body. That is the worst rubbish that you can ever hear, because in the time of Patanjali, the knowledge of the human body was completely different. And actually, Patanjali's focus is on prana. It is not focused on muscles or skeletal system of the body. So that is why I still always say that learning yoga from the medical approach is like following the blind, and it will really make us blind. So there is no conflict of interest between the Sharanagati principle and the Ashtanga Yoga, because in the traditional time, all the tools of yoga was actually samantraka. That's why it's called Bhakti Yoga. Patanjali's Ashtanga Yoga is called Bhakti Yoga because you needed to use mantras in the practices. There's something called Swadhyaya in the Niyamas. What is Swadhyaya? Vyasa, the earliest commentator of the Yoga Sutra, defines Swadhyaya as Swashaka Adhyayanam Athava Pranavadi Mantra Japaha. That means you have to do Swashaka Adhyayanam. Adhyayanam, there is no ambiguity in the term. It refers to Vedic chanting. Swashaka, that belongs to your shaka. For example, when we introduce, we are saying, for example, when I am introducing my Abhivadanam, I am saying Yajushyaka Dhyayi. I belong to the Yajurveda. Somebody will say Sama Shaka Dhyayi. Somebody will say Rig Shaka Dhyayi. Whatever Veda you belong to, you recite that. That is Swadhyaya. Or Athava or Pranavadi Mantra Japaha. The japa of mantras like Pranava. So that is Swadhyaya. What is self-inquiry? Self-inquiry. It's not the new age thinking of, oh, sit and look at aphorisms or affirmations. No. Do mantras. This is Swadhyaya. That's why in the first chapter, when they talk about the mantra japa, Patanjali says, Pratyakchetana adhigama. You will realize yourself. You will realize yourself. That is Swadhyaya. Self-realization, self-reflection, self-inquiry. So please do that. That is what Patanjali is saying. So there is no conflict of interest at all between Patanjali's Ashtanga Yoga as well as the Śaraṇāgati Yoga of the elders.
So the two are very closely related, is what I can understand from what you probably interlinked, I can say.
Yeah.
Or the heart of it itself is Śaraṇāgati.
Yes,
of
it is.
Ashtanga Yoga.
In my understanding, which comes from my traditional view of thinking, from my grandfather, from our acharyas like Swami Deshika and Ramanuja, etc., Śaraṇāgati and Ashtanga Yoga of Patanjali, Sharanga and Ashtanga Yoga are like two sides of the same coin. Within this, they hold Ishvara.
So now this question just pops up to my mind. I have often heard that Advaita is more like Sankhya and Vishishtadvaita is more like Yoga. Any thoughts on this, sir?
Actually, not at all. Advaita is more. Sankhya and Yoga are very close to Vishishtadvaita philosophy because, for example, Sankhya is very clear that there is a Purusha and there is a Prakriti, which means there is duality. Advaita does not believe in duality. Advaita, Sankhya and Yoga believe in what is called the plurality of Purusha. Purusha, Bahutanata, Bahutvam. There's actually a verse in the Sankhya Karika that talks about the plurality of Purusha. Whereas in Advaita, there is only one Purusha. Yoga is not talking about one Purusha because there is Purusha and there is Purusha Vishesha. Kritartham pratinashtam api anashtam tat anya sadharanatvat, anya Purusha sadharanatvat. You use Purusha uses one object, the purpose is fulfilled, that object becomes at the service of other Purushas. So therefore, Patanjali's school is saying there are other Purushas. Sankhya is saying there are other Purushas. Totally different from the Advaita way of thinking. The Advaita way of thinking is kind of a flawed way of thinking from the Vedic tradition, which I am very sure if Shankara had a little bit more time in his life, he only lived 32, which achieved great things. If he had a little bit more time, he would have changed his view. I am very sure about it. The Advaita is more closer to the Buddhist philosophy. That is why certain acharyas of the Vishishtadvaita tradition, of the Dvaita tradition, etc., they actually accuse Advaita as Buddhism in disguise. They even say that Advaita is non-Vedic in the approach. Because in the Vedic view, there is Jivatma and there is Paramatma. The moment you accept the two, there is no duality. There is duality, there is not a non-duality. They are never going to be like two separate, they are never going to be one. Except when the Jivatma has reached the Paramatma. Advaita's prophecy is that they are always the same. It's not always the same. Because if it's always the same, each one of us is an Ishvara. If we are Ishvara, that Ishvara must be a bloody flawed person because we are so flawed. All of us. So there is a very big difference between Advaita and Sankhya, Yoga, as well as the Vishishtadvaita philosophy, including, I'll tell you, including in a certain interesting concept, that is how to establish pramana. For example, Patanjali is saying that there is three ways of pramana: pratyaksha, anumana, agamaha, pramanani. There are three ways of pramana. Sankhya, Yoga, and Visishta Dvaita accept pratyaksha, anumana, and agama. Advaita is adding upamana and arthapatti, two more types of pramana. So even how to establish a fact, there are differences between Sankhya, Yoga, and Visishta Dvaita, which is in one bracket, and Sankhya and Advaita, which is a completely another school. So there's a big difference between the two, and I'm quite sure that had Shankara lived longer, he would have come to that. And if you read between the lines, I think Shankara is also accepting these concepts, because when he writes the commentary to the Ishvara Pranidhana Sutra, he's not propagating the Advaita view. He's propagating the Yoga and Sankhya view that Purusha and Ishvara are two separate beings or two separate entities. So you have to read between the lines.
So viewers can post their comments if they have any comments before I ask my last few questions. So if you have any questions, you can please post it and I'll read it out to sir. Can you tell us about tangible benefits of prapatti, or how we can incorporate it in our daily lives? Of course, yes, you told us about mantra and how mantras help us in attaining that stage. Can you give us, so because it may not be possible for everybody, because it also depends on how the person is, because Sharanagati may not happen naturally to everyone.
See, when you start to get the feeling of that you are in control, then you become very obsessive. You start to grasp. Whereas Sharanagati is saying, I'm not in control, I'm letting go. So when you have that attitude, when you can really embrace that attitude, immediately your body will relax. So you will have your neurological system very relaxed, because you will not have fear or anxiety. You will have no problem with your circulation system, because your blood pressure will not be high. You will actually let go, because you are letting go of ego. So Vairagyam is very important for Sharanagati. So when you do that, all these things will improve. So when you kind of let go, then your stress is also reducing. And that will improve your digestive system, that will improve your neurological system, that will improve your circulation system, cognition will become better. So there is tangible benefits for Sharanagati. Why do you think Ramanuja lived for 120 years? Deshika lived 100 plus years, because they were so healthy, because their systems worked very well, because they could really embrace that feeling that they are not in control. They don't need to be always in control. They accepted the flow of life, because they knew that something bigger than them is there, and something that is bigger than them is protecting them, is guiding them. So they flowed with nature rather than go against the nature.
That's great. It was a very nice explanation. Do you have any final message for the viewers? How they can become better yoga practitioners
I think
in
if
general?
Yeah, I think it would be very good for all the yoga practitioners of the world to embrace this principle of prapatti or sharanagati, not necessarily in a fanatic religious way, but more in a spiritual way, in connection with the nature or the environment, because divine is acting through nature. We have different seasons, we have different weathers, we have different things. So flow with that rather than try to control that or destroy that. What we are doing on two extremes is, on the one hand, we are trying to control nature, On the other hand, we are trying to destroy nature. Both we are going to fail because nature is bigger than us. Nature is much bigger than this because nature is divine. So, no matter what we try, many people now talk this nonsense about we have to save the earth. That's a whole load of rubbish. We only have to save ourselves because nature will readjust itself. But in that process, we will be killed because we are killing the resources that are nourishing us. We are nourished by nature. We are killing that nature. It's not permanent damage to nature because that damage will only kill us. And once we are gone, nature has no interference anymore. So it will revive back. So we cannot destroy the divine. So try to embrace this concept of pranidhana in a spiritual way, in connection with nature, in connection with the divine in the natural form. This will be very, very helpful. For this, surrendering the ego is quite important. Surrendering the ego is quite important. That is what I would like to say.
That was wonderful having this discussion. I'm sure that our viewers also enjoyed, and many of them have written here that they enjoyed the questions and the answers. It's very. I'm happy to read the comments here.
Very good.
Thank you, Dr. Kaustubh Desikachar, for joining us in this conversation series. We hope to see you in more sessions with different topics in the future as well.
Pleasure. My pleasure.
Thank you to all the viewers. And thank you, sir, once again. Thank you very much. Namaste.
Thank you, everybody.